It looks to me, at least at this point, that the USA will not win this fight with the whole world. Of course, it's still early days, lots of things to be uncertain about, but perhaps the story of 2025 will be Trump fought the world and the world won. The USA looks like it has chosen to fight the world. China, Europe, Iran, maybe Canada, Greenland, for goodness sake, Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world, pathetic, you might say. And with its tariff war, its trade war, it has chosen to fight pretty much every country in the world, even the Australian territories of the McDonald and Heard Islands, where there are only penguins. It looks to me, at least at this point, that the USA will not win this fight with the whole world. Of course, it's still early days, lots of things to be uncertain about, but perhaps the story of 2025 will be Trump fought the world and the world won. I'm Jeff Rich. This is the Burning Archive, and I talk about world history and world affairs, including geopolitics. So in today's stream, in today's video, what I want to look at is give you my assessment of the USA government in 2025, the Trump administration's foreign policy. What is it? Is it change? Is it revolutionary change? Is it chaos? Or is it continuity, as people like Brian Beletic argue? Or is it something else? And I'm going to suggest, for the sake of our discussion here on YouTube, for the sake of just lifting the quality of the discussion, that it is something else. It's not just empire business as usual. It is something of a cultural twist based on American culture and institutions. I'm really going to focus in on what I see as the sort of socio-cultural patterns really driving the Trump administration. There are a lot of, I guess, realist international relations people and defense and foreign policy people. But I guess the perspective I take on geopolitics and world history is a kind of a socio-cultural perspective, and trying to see some of the sort of emotional and other sort of patterns that seem to drive things, the kind of myths and stories that are sort of behind some of the decision-making, the sometimes hard to explain decision-making of leading officials like President Trump or Pete Hegseth. So my assessment of the foreign policy. Now, let's just read some announcements that have literally just come through on the news feed right now. I'll actually read it from my phone. So the United States delivers a Panama Canal ultimatum to China. The United States has vowed to take back the Panama Canal from Chinese influence and has launched a series of military deployments and joint exercises with Panama to reinforce that commitment, according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And then also in the newsfeed, we have the announcement by the United States government spokesperson, Tammy Bruce, former Fox News presenter, that the date and agenda of the next Russia-US talks have been announced. And interestingly, the official has said that these talks are solely focused on our embassy operations, not on normalising a bilateral relationship overall, which can only happen, as we've noted, once there is peace between not Russia and the United States, but between Russia and Ukraine. There are no political or security issues on the agenda, and Ukraine is not, absolutely not, on the agenda. It is those peace talks going on between Russia and the US, as I think I might have said when I did my initial assessment of them a month or two ago, are very much about establishing the most basic levels of diplomatic relations and confidence-building measures between the states. So don't expect a sudden peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine anytime soon. Let me give you an example of what I think is the essence of the United States foreign policy right at the moment. And this is from the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller. He's been a long-time member of the Trump camp, an advocate of tough immigration policies. I believe he might have been the principal author of the initial American Carnage inauguration address back in 2017, and perhaps also the golden age, the new golden age of America inauguration address more recently. And this is a quote from his appearance recently on Fox News after the tariff announcement, and you can see in the little the sort of information there at the bottom of the screen that, you know, it's occurring in the context of, you know, major drops in stock market prices after the tariff announcement. And Stephen Miller says, why should America protect the world, send foreign aid to the world, defend the world, provide for the world, and in exchange get ripped off by every other country in the world? It's a little bit of a piece with, you know, J.D. Vance talking to Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House, and despite a million Ukrainians dying, or, you know, up to 1 million Ukrainians dying in the service of US geopolitical objectives, it's Volodymyr Zelensky who should be saying thank you to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. There is a real sense of resentment, I think, coming out of US officials. And in fact, if I were to have a single word to describe US foreign policy right now, it is resentment. Resentment against the world, and how the world has, you know, climbed up to the same high plateau of social, economic, political and cultural achievement as the United States. The world is as much in a golden age as America, and the United States is not happy about it. And I guess my perspective on the whole overview of the United States foreign policy is that it is helpful to think about, you know, if you like, what is the governing emotion that's driving these decision makers, the decisions, even in government, surprise, surprise, are partly driven by emotions and emotional contexts and the passions expressed on Signal chat groups as much as by rational decision-making processes, rational assessments of game theories and all that kind of thing. Emotions drive us all to make decisions, even in foreign policy. And I think the emotion of resentment is very much the governing emotion of the Trump administration at the moment, and probably not only the Trump administration. In a way, I would also say you could see that under the Biden administration. There was that infamous speech by Joe Biden to the Congress at one point, where he said, name me a single world leader who would exchange places with Xi Jinping. That was an expression of anger and resentment. And that resentment is, I think, driven by a sense of let down supremacy. Let's go back to this comment from Stephen Miller. Why should America protect the world? Well, has America protect the world? Why should America send foreign aid to the world? Well, has it really given all that? It's not a particularly generous donor in terms of foreign aid, or an effective donor in foreign aid. Is it defending the world, or is it aggressively pursuing American interests around the world? Is it really, frankly, providing for the world, the United States? And surely it's not really being ripped off by every other country in the world, even though its really strange assessment of tariffs are driven by that sort of sentiment. So I think this, resentment, like if you think about when you resent something personally, it's often driven by a kind of a disappointed expectation, a disappointed sense of entitlement, I guess. And the American foreign policy elites across the board, I think, are very much driven by this shattered expectation that the world looks up to America, that America is the light on the hill, that America has created this wonderful rules-based order. It's Pax America, even though it's been full of wars, and that the world is not sufficiently grateful, that as a result, America feels ripped off. And so, yes, I think this sentiment of this emotion of resentment, driven by a sense of disappointed supremacism and American primacy, American exceptionalism, is, I think, best described as American supremacism. As Madeleine Albright said, we stand taller, we see further, we have more capabilities than the lesser peoples of the world. In Madeleine Albright's case, that was sometimes expressed in an ethnic prejudice as well. But it's not just emotions. I think there's a tangle of three things that you can see governing American foreign policy if you do a kind of a socio-cultural analysis of American foreign policy right now. You need to look at the governing emotion, the thing that's really getting under people's skin, that's motivating them, that's making them want to make that call to say, yeah, let's bomb Yemen, for goodness sake, as a display of our prowess, a way of showing it to the rest of the world that we really do have that warrior ethos still. So you need to look at the emotions, but you also, in a way, need to look at what you could call myths or archetypes, a sort of a story of the kind of story that brings things together. So, yeah, you need to look at a myth or an archetype, a kind of a storyline that really governs the American foreign policy accounts of what they are trying to do in the world. And, a lot of people talk about Donald Trump as a bully. I think I've talked about J.D. Vance as his hillbilly harangue. But there, and I think someone in the comment is referring to his absolutely appalling comment about Chinese peasants, as if I don't know, he hasn't read very many, I think, history books or analyses of Chinese society recently. I don't think he knows terribly much about the employment structures in Chinese factories, or indeed Western factories, since they had largely peasant economies in the late 19th century. But I've been sidetracked there. And I think the key myth, I think, that is sort of driving American foreign policy, and this was the subject of a video and a Substack piece that I wrote not so long ago, is the myth of the caudillo. Now, the caudillo is a word for a kind of a military political strongman in particularly Latin America, but also in North America. If you like, it's a machismo might be a more commonly known word. It's the kind of very, macho man who, uses his military prowess or his aggressive prowess, whether that's in business dealings or in cultural projection, in his ability to do a hillbilly harangue, and uses that to establish political authority. But the political authority very much rests on him being keeping on winning, keeping on showing his strength, keeping on showing his masculine prowess. And I think, in a way, this is the very much a steering sort of heroic image that is shaping the actions and thoughts and emotions of American decision makers right now. Take a look at Pete Hegseth. He is, in a way, the absolute embodiment of this. He goes and visits the troops and does push-ups with him. He displays his tats. He speaks openly and very much so about a warrior ethos. I think this has a functional purpose within the domestic politics of America. I think it's about, culture wars and also gender wars, and also a remotivation of American troops, because there is has been a recruitment crisis to America, and I think in part Pete Hegseth is meant to be a communications tool to sort of remotivate the American military. But you also see this sort of quasi-military political leader in the business world in America. It's, if you like, it's also the image of the Godfather in American crime shows, and I think this archetype has very much influenced the political culture in America, the general business culture in America. And I think we see it in the actions of Donald Trump. We see it in the actions of Elon Musk. We even, in a way, see it in the actions of, business developer turned late career diplomat Stephen Witkoff, in terms of, business deals, tough-minded, realistic business deals. And so I think this whole idea of the caudillo has very much influenced the culture of American political decision-making. I've discussed that in my Substack piece. Okay, so yes, in this piece on my Substack, I think, which was called Machismo Meets American Destiny, the strongman tradition in American politics, I made reference to Elon Musk's notorious, stiff arm military salute, and how, in a way, you could interpret that as a salute from 1930s Germany, mindful of YouTube's protocols. But just as likely, his motives were driven by this desire to appear to be a macho man with Trump, to assert his military destiny. And I quote, and how it was, in a way, an expression of that American tradition of political military strongmen that you see in Teddy Kennedy, but was also expressed in a famous piece by a Latin American in Mexico, who sort of, I guess, countered the virility of North American political leadership with the virility of Central Latin American leadership. Jose Marti, famous Our America, where he talked about virile nations self-made by the rifle and the law, and how they love other virile nations and only those. And I think that is very much what is sort of informing the archetypal storytelling of the United States right now. And then the final thing, though, is, of course, there's emotions, and there's this archetypal narrative framework for understanding how heroic leadership projects itself in the world, how, political leaders can, put their stamp on the world by controlling events. The final thing is, well, they don't entirely, it's not just a free choice. They can't just do anything they want. And they are expressing those emotions and trying to act out those stories in real constraints governed by new circumstances, and strategic situations. The relationship of the United States to the rest of the world. And when these leaders, want to show the world who's boss, want to show the world who is the caudillo of the world, what do they find? They find they're actually a lot weaker than they really would like to be, that they can't really take on Russia, that they can't really take on China in ways that they can't really maintain the image of always winning and being the toughest expression of a warrior ethos, because in fact they are governing in conditions of, as Emmanuel Todd says, the strategic defeat of the West. What they're finding is when they act out these sort of they play their role of the leaders of the United States within a very militarized political culture, driven by the emotion of, disappointed supremacism turning into resentment at being ripped off by the rest of the world. What they find is they are actually facing defeat but unable to admit defeat. They're finding that they are, rather than being virile, all-conquering macho men, they are presiding over incompetent administrations, incompetent armies. They don't even know how to organise, a group chat in Signal or any other phone-based app successfully, and then check who's on the call. So there's this clash between their image of themselves and their ultimate competence, as well as, and that is expressed also in geopolitical terms. America is hugely overextended in terms of its, military occupation of the world. The 800 military bases in so many countries around the world, representing 4% of the world's population, secure behind two enormous oceans and with largely friendly neighbours, who yet spends 40% or even over 40% of the world's military budget. A truly astonishing, excessive focus on military issues. And this huge overextended military yet can't seem to win any wars. It is engaged in endless wars, but it can't seem to win any wars. And winning the wars is the fundamentally essential sort of psychological need for the caudillo leader, the military strongman leader. He needs to keep winning the wars in order to maintain domestic political authority, as well as, I guess, his image of himself, his image of his warrior ethos, as Pete Hegseth and Eric Prince and all those kind of people express it. Even in the economic realm, you can see a man like Peter Navarro, who likes to get himself photographed in a black T-shirt showing his musculature as a man, I think in his 60s, if not 70s. You would have thought, someone with better psychological adjustment might have given that all away. But Peter Navarro has done that now, and you do wonder if sometimes these same emotional projections are also driving some of the decision-making around issues like tariffs. So there we have a situation where we have emotions of resentment driven by disappointed supremacism. We have the myth of the military strongman, the caudillo, or machismo, the warrior ethos, and the boss, the art of the deal, the you're fired Donald Trump, who kind of makes a kind of a cult of aggressive masculinity, not to put too fine a point on it, in his leadership style. And you have real circumstances that mean the capability of living out that sort of thing is not possible, and the external success is not achieved, that rather than victory, they experience defeat. It's not something they can psychologically adapt to. What do? They bomb civilians in Yemen. Appalling. That's the true pathetic behaviour, if you like, referring to that infamous signal chat. And they apply tariffs to, low-income countries in Africa, low-income countries in Asia, to uninhabited islands that are the territories of Australia. So pathetic is the attempt to, assert this new kind of military supremacy. In a way, it harks back, I think, to a comment that Emmanuel Todd made in his discussion of the strategic situation of America. I discussed it in, I think it was either a live or a video a few weeks or months ago, where he said that we're in a situation now where rational, realistic explanations of behaviour of the leadership elites of countries really doesn't quite suffice. Realist international relations, John Mearsheimer style international relations theory says, that people should be making rational calculations on the basis of power and strategy and national interest. But what we're actually seeing is decision-making that makes no sense if one just assumes, a series of assumed rational calculations behind the policy making. But it is understandable if you look at a broader framework for explaining, the motivations of leaders, the motivations of us all as, humans, which are broader than just economics and power. It needs to go to some of these socio-cultural factors that I've sort of described before. As I think I wrote in a recent piece called Trump's Peace is an American Hustle, this is also something that is broader than Donald Trump. And this is also a point I think Sam Roggeveen made in some of his comments, and many people have made in trying to make sense of Trump 2.0, that this is not an aberrant individual in the White House. This is more than just, a mad king, even though there are many people in America who I think are sort of falling back on that explanation that, the weirdness of what's going on in Donald Trump's America is really the madness of an individual, or the evil conspiracy of some neoconservative deep state faction that is undermining the true will of the people. I think, as I wrote in this piece, Trump's Peace is an American Hustle, where I expressed the view fairly early on that the idea that Trump is a peace president was an absolute illusion. But what I said is that Trump is just another gerontocratic American oligarch shaped by the nihilistic, that's a reference to Emmanuel Todd's work in The Defeat of the West, where he says the true nature of America is liberal oligarchy and nihilism, by which he means a lack of common belief, a sense of drifting into just destructive behaviour, and nihilistic machismo leadership culture of the USA. He is not the first and will not be the last American president who presents false promises of peace. Trump personifies the USA state. The deeper question is, how does the USA state negotiate peace? And I think the way in which the USA state negotiates peace has been demonstrated to us somewhat over the last few months. You could also say it's been pretty consistently demonstrated over the last 80 years of the US-led world order.